Welcome into Sports Talk Live Buffalo Plus here. I'm Sports Director John Scott, joined by our own insider Hall of Famer Vic Carucci here. Free agency officially underway. Bills somewhat quiet, though we did just get one more addition within what I think about the past hour or so. The rest of the NFL, though, it's been absolutely bonkers, including a team with the biggest trade that we've seen in this offseason saying, no, I'm not doing that after all. We'll get into Max Crosby, the Ravens, the Raiders, all of that, and other moves around the league, plus kind of a look at what's been going on in free agency in this offseason with the rest of the AFC East. But we'll start with the Bills, and not many moves. Now 4 additions with this latest one we'll get to after this. But the big, most notable one is once again chasing a premier pass rusher. I don't know if I'll call Bradley Chubb just that, but he is someone that is coming to the Bills here on a 3-year deal, and it's in the Joey Bosa-esque type of price range, about $14.5 million, $29 guaranteed here. Your thoughts on what Bradley Chubb can bring to the Bills?
Yeah, I think, first of all, that is a fair comparison. I think Joey was around 12, something like that. Look, on the Bills, where this is a weakness, almost anyone who comes in from the outside, not almost anyone, but someone with at least a little bit of an accomplished background, that qualifies as an improvement, as an upgrade. And Bradley Chubb is that. He's an upgrade because it's not upgrading very much. And I also think it's important to mention right away the scheme, the change over to the 3-4, and how he fits that, how he is truly more of an edge in the makeup, in the physical structure, or the build of a guy that you want on the edge in a 3-4. And he's got a lot to prove from his own standpoint. He talked about that obviously to the media today, missing that 2024 season, trying to come back in 2025. And I think given usually you see with major injuries that knock out a guy for a year, it's not the immediate year after in which he does his improving. And I think the Bills, in fact, I'm sure of this, in signing him, had that in mind, that year 2 of recovery is better usually than year 1.
He had 11 sacks the year before the ACL injury, missed all 2024, 8.5 this past season, 2 of those coming against Josh Allen and the Bills this season here. Chubb saying, hey, you talk about the scheme. He referenced immediately Vance Joseph as the scheme he came into with the Denver Broncos back in 2018, and believing Jim Leonard going to be carrying over a bit of that sort of a style as the Bills defensive coordinator. So that's what he feels like he's good. And he says his goal, year 1 with the Bills, which, listen, a bit of pandering here, but he's saying, hey, I have 12 career sacks as my high. That's what I would like to surpass here in year 1. The Bills do not get double-digit sack guys on this team. It just really doesn't happen very often, if at all. So if he gets in that range, like a Leonard Floyd got a couple of years ago, it's a home run signing.
And when you look at the injury history, and again, not unlike Von Miller when he came aboard, not unlike what they did last year with Joey Bosa, when you have a history of injury and pretty recent history of injury, you have to sort of keep that in the back of your mind and know how much do you get out of this guy over how long. Do you get a productive year out of him? And honestly, I think that's the most realistic expectation. Could it be 2 years? Could it be a year and a half? Because kind of that's what happened. I mean, you thought Von Miller, it was really encouraging, and I'm putting the Von Miller at his apex, at his best, a better player overall, but when they got him with the injury history, obviously it wasn't long, unfortunately, or long enough for the Bills to get the full Von Miller.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Bills making, again, within the past hour or so, an addition here at the safety position. Expect to see C.J. Gardner-Johnston, the guy who potentially slides in next to Cole Bishop to fill that void by the recently released Taylor Rapp. Your thoughts on the former Bears and Eagles defensive back?
Look, safety is such a wide open container for this team. It's fairly empty. You do have Cole Bishop, and I think Cole was coming into his own, obviously, last season. High hopes for him, but you got to pair him with somebody. And, moving on from Taylor Rapp, it felt like this team was going to do that all along. And what do they really have at safety? Not much, if anything. This is a solid signing for the latter portion of your free agency period. I know it's only a day after the league year officially began, but the biggest and most premier signings happen sooner than this. You're getting sort of into that next tier. And this guy comes with, he's bounced around from some teams. I think, again, he will be fine with safeties. It's a little less of a conversation about scheme fit. The fact that he had 3 of his, I think it's 6 career sacks last season, and of course 2 of them came against the Giants, albeit that, but he is a guy that can be utilized as a blitzer. I think Jim Leonard's going to do plenty with the DBs in this blitzing style defense where everybody's coming from all angles or faking to come from different angles.
I think a 1-year deal up to $6 million is the reported value here. I think that means we can still go safety high in the draft if you're Brandon Beane, and it says, hey, worst case scenario, maybe Jordan Hancock can marinate into something after you have a veteran presence back there as a safety net, similar to, even though it didn't work out, what they had hoped Mike Edwards would be years ago.
Absolutely, and you took the words out of my mouth as far as Edwards in this sense. They both come in, Edwards came in too, but let's not underestimate Super Bowl pedigree, the fact that he has a Super Bowl ring, right? And that was part of what the Bills had hoped Edwards would bring, and he probably could still have brought it by just being there as a presence. Got one of these, right? So I don't have a Super Bowl, but a Super Bowl ring, you could show that in the sense of not to be boastful, but to show that you know what it looks like to get to and win a Super Bowl. And bringing in guys with that mentality or that experience isn't a bad thing.
We touched on D. Alford on Monday's show because that signing had just really come down here, but it seems pretty convenient. He's going to be the nickel replacement for Taron Johnson. Right.
He's got that skill to play nickel, of course. He could go outside in a pinch. He's versatile. He's also a return man. And I just brought up blitzing in reference to Gardner Johnson. With regard to Alford, he can do that too. He's got a couple. It's notable that in his last season playing with Atlanta, he was utilized there. I think
he could, Tua right there.
And there he is, going after Tua. So I think rushing the quarterback, again, I'm not trying to say that these DBs are going to do what they want Chubb to do or what they want Greg Rousseau to do, but it's probably something, because it was a 9-year run of defenses that were in that Sean McDermott mold of the 4-3, of the zone sort of pressure. And yes, they had some pressure packages that involved some DBs, but not to the extent that I think you're going to see it in a 3-4.
Some of the housekeeping that we nearly got at the very end, Josh Allen a restructure, but we were curious what would happen with Dawson Knox. I had assumed it would be a cut the whole time. That is not what the Bills ultimately do. A completely new 3-year deal for Dawson Knox is a way that we still don't know the numbers. They still are not out there, but it assuredly is lowering what was going to be a $17 million cap hit for this upcoming season here. Your thoughts on clearly them prioritizing finding a creative way to keep Knox, and then Knox clearly willing to take a pay cut?
I think you can accurately guess multiple factors. One, of course, the guy wants to stay with the Buffalo Bills. He's made a mark here in Buffalo. The fact that you see him in a lot of local advertising that they buy time on this station, wonderful thing, is not a small consideration. He's got a presence. He's got a following. He has also got a really good, tight relationship with a guy named Josh Allen. Doesn't hurt to have that at all. And I'm sure there is some element of that. And along with Joe Brady now as head coach, who as OC definitely found ways to get the ball to Knox or get him involved in certain plays. I know he's a guy that people like to, fans, when they want to, be critical or see things that they didn't like so much, can point in his direction and say, why aren't they getting more? Why isn't he doing better? But I think as a compliment to a tight end room that has Dalton Kincaid as your primary pass catcher and still has Jackson Hawes as a blocker, as an inliner who can do other things too, also can catch the football. I think the big picture of the tight end room is what they saw, and that he's a good fit for it, and he was willing to accept what I would more than venture to guess is a pay cut.
I think, ironically enough, people maybe circled back to appreciate Dawson Knox a little bit more this year with the way he was able to fill in for Dalton Kincaid, have the best numbers he's had since being a Pro Bowler the year before they drafted Dalton Kincaid. I actually look at him as a very underrated, valuable piece to the Bills' offense for a lot of the reasons you laid out here. Finally here, Brandon Beane has been quiet. Like you said, only 4 additions. Chubb, the most notable. Obviously, the DJ Moore trade was another one. But what do you make of him kind of laying low so far?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to get on this show and others that we do here and just say Big Baller Beane. I just want to say that because that's what he established himself as doing, make splash moves. They haven't all been great moves, but they've been splashy. He's had that splashy tendency. That has not been the case here. But I think the obvious reason is the cap hasn't allowed for that. He's kind of worked around it. I'm going to give the grade a solid grade. So far, in terms of what was done, wasn't a lot, but I do think areas that were important to address have been addressed.
I think a lot of it is he's going to go through the draft, as you think.
Yes.
And I think this is a year, we've heard him in the past, recently, say he's going to kind of clear the books. That's why you get rid of Taron Johnson, just rip the Band-Aid off, and none of these post-June 1 sort of cuts. It's let's clear the books as best we can.
And lean on lean heavily on the 2026 draft.
Absolutely. All right, it's time for us to turn our attention more broadly to the rest of the NFL. And the Ravens backing out of the Max Crosby deal, the biggest story of the week. Vic and I getting into that and more when Sports Talk Live Plus returns. Welcome back to Sports Talk Live Plus. John Scott, Vic Carucci here. We're going to go a little more widespread angle with the rest of the NFL because a lot of money has been spent by everyone else that's not really the Buffalo Bills. And there also have been some big-time moves. Listen, here in town, we're not strangers to things are not official until the league year becomes official. Look no further back than J.D. McKissick a couple years and that whole debacle here with the Bills. But the Max Crosby situation with the Baltimore Ravens is maybe the biggest example we have ever seen with this. 2 first-round picks were supposed to go to Vegas in exchange for the star pass rusher. And then Tuesday night, as Bam Adebayo was going for 83 points in an NBA game, the Ravens are like, no, we're going to back out because he failed a physical. Your take on this wild thing?
Oh, no. This is an all-timer, and it's going to be an all-timer because the move, when it was made, or we thought it was, and it was coming down, was huge and dominant in terms of off-season news. This was taking every headline, and what was being given up for him in the 2 first-round picks, what he would mean to the Ravens, and all the machinations that were put together. I do shows, as you know, for SiriusXM NFL Radio. We spent, because this happened on a Friday night, we spent a good chunk of our last Saturday show devoted to this, to Max Crosby and his impact. I want to say 3 segments of the show with guests and everything else, and then no more. So it's a terrible look for the Ravens, no matter how we cut it. Eric DaCosta, their general manager, otherwise seen as a very competent guy, but it feels like they did something dirty here in the sense of let's not approve this trade. They have the full discretion. The league gives you the discretion of your own medical staff not approving or having a guy fail a physical and then moving on to Trey Hendrickson. And that's what kind of doubled down on the dirty. Like, we got cold feet, don't want to give up the 2 picks. Oh, wait a minute. We can get pretty much a similar guy for no picks and sign him to a big contract. And that has rubbed a lot of people throughout the league the wrong way. That move initially impacted how other teams were doing business. And there's that. There are genies that can't be put back in the bottle as a result of this. So this is going to be a hard one to live down, but it's a reminder, you started it, that because it's in motion, it's not done until it's done when the league year begins, and that was 4 p.m. Wednesday.
A couple of things here. The legal tampering period has been made up for the sake of television and the league grabbing more eyes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not going to change it because they love the theater of it here, but this is also just a cautionary tale. Yeah. Also, everyone knows when Max Crosby's knee injury happened. They know when the surgery happened. So the Ravens knew that he wasn't going to pass a physical. Every team in the league knew that. Right. So you assumed that responsibility of more just, here's the medical checkup here. We understand what we're getting. I know that's a lot of it here. Before we move on to the Hendrickson piece of this, people are naturally going to say, should the Bills make a run at Max Crosby?
Well, what's interesting is I've heard these comments by a lot of analysts that say his value went down because of what happened with the Ravens. I don't agree with that at all, because you just said it. Everyone has access to the same information. You had a team in the Ravens that was willing to part with 2 number ones for this guy. Well, every other team in the league has the same ability to do that if they want to get this guy. Why would his value go down because the Ravens decided to not move on him? So I truly believe that if you really want this guy, you go after him. Now, if the suggestion is, and I think this is where you're going because I've heard others say it, now he's available at some sort of a bargain price, I'm not buying that that's necessarily the case. And if you are, because again, you have to trust your own medical staff. If there are questions about his knee and it's a high price, which, okay, maybe it's not even 2 first rounders, but if a first rounder is involved, you've got to know this guy is at least giving you 2 healthy years. Because the other conjecture I heard was, well, the Ravens saw that they could have passed him, but maybe he'd give them 1 season. For 2 first-round picks, you don't want just 1 season.
Here's the only thing. I'm not going to say discount, but because you said it, a lot of teams operated, hey, we're in the Max Crosby sweepstakes, now we're not. They don't have the assets or the space for him. That maybe opens it up for others to potentially go down that list. Baltimore, they're going to be fine. They end up with Trey Hendrickson here. What does that add to their defense?
It adds a lot. It adds almost, I'll say almost as much as we were praising them when I was telling you on the radio show for acquiring Crosby. And I say praising, I mean just going to the max. Trey Hendrickson, outstanding pass rusher, maybe not quite at the Max Crosby level, but really good when healthy. And he, too, has had some physical issues. But if you think about this Baltimore team with him on that defense, the pass rush improving instantly, affecting their pass coverage, which was really the weakness, the tough part, the worst part of their defense, and assuming a Lamar Jackson is back to his full self, and you still have Derrick Henry and whoever else is going to throw the football to him, whatever they do in the draft, I would say the Ravens instantly become what a lot of people thought they were after the Crosby trade, and that is a higher degree Super Bowl contender.
Their idea and trying to spin it to Costa that, oh, we were going to try to get both. Yeah. Get the heck out of here. And from a Bills side of things, I know they've been attached, at least the fan base, to Hendrickson.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want him for $30 million at this stage of his career.
I think in either case, Crosby or Henderson, you're assuming a lot of risk because the price, it won't be a cheap, whether the price is draft picks or in the case of Hendrickson, the deal, the money, you're assuming a lot. And then think about the Bills. I mean, the machinations that they've done with their cap management to just get people to get this roster together and why they haven't done the splashy things.
100% here. All right. The other move that maybe actually had an actual link to the Bills, because he said it today, was Mike Evans signing what ended up, when you see the numbers, a 1-year, $16 million deal with the San Francisco 49ers. He said today, when introduced in San Francisco, I was looking to be with a contender and a good fit, and he said San Francisco and the Buffalo Bills. How big of a miss out do you think it was in the acquisition of DJ Moore, knowing that room still could use improvements, to not maybe try to get to that price point? Yeah,
a big part of me says that would have been the one to extend yourself as far as you could. I think Mike Evans would have been is probably an even bigger upgrade than what Moore might be, and I see him as a true number 1 talent. He is not the player he was at his peak, but he's still darn good. He's still a difference maker. He still wins those jump balls and, and whatever. He's going to compete and extend himself and make plays. And he's a force. He's so bright. He's such a great route runner. He's such a great guy to have in the locker room. You listen to Baker Mayfield talk about working with this guy and how much he's going to miss him. This would have been, I think, an amazing pickup for the Bills.
I would have liked to see them try to do both.
Yeah.
I don't know how you really work that, and I know they're probably hanging on. When people ask about the wide receiver room in general, it's like, okay, I think they're done. They maybe will draft another one, but I don't think it's going to be a high investment. I feel like this year they feel like, hey, we got to give it one last squeeze with the Josh Palmer contract and the Keon Coleman draft pick.
I guess so. A week ago on the show, we were thinking about which way they go in the draft after the Moore pickup, and the thought was more along the lines of defensive end, drafting an edge rusher or whatever. So does Chubb change that a little bit as well? Can you go into this draft now and think maybe with that lower portion of the first round, are you getting better value with a receiver? Does a guy get pushed down to you? Because again, there's some fallout coming from the teams that were from about the middle of the first round down after the Max Crosby washout or whatever it was, the pulling out of the deal by the Ravens.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to go to the division coming up next here on Sports Talk Live. Plus here, no more Tua in Miami. Malik Willis coming on in. The Jets with a familiar face at quarterback. We'll get into all of it after the break. Final few minutes here on Sports Talk Live. Plus here, we're going to get into some of the bigger moves in the AFC East here, and that is all surrounding quarterbacks here, and it's a switch in Miami. Tua Tagovailoa is now out, actually signing with the Atlanta Falcons, and they replaced him with Malik Willis. Your thoughts on, we kind of knew this was going to happen with Tua, but their decision to then move on from him and bring in Malik Willis, arguably the most sought-after quarterback on the market. Yeah,
and it sort of fits, I think, the changeover there. With the coaching and the Green Bay duo that has taken over the Dolphins, that brings in a former Green Bay quarterback. His limited time, the fact that you don't have as much starting reps or whatever with Willis. It makes it tough to kind of gauge what he can do. There's a lot to like about his dynamic skills and movement. Does he have the greatest arm? Not really. It could represent an upgrade. I'm just not sure how much of an upgrade. And I just think it's sort of a hard one to gauge because of the limited body of work.
And there is a new old quarterback for the New York Jets, and it's Geno Smith getting traded from Vegas to the team that drafted him initially here. Your thoughts on Geno round 2 in New York?
Look, he's been a great story on how he sort of remade himself, reinvented himself, and mostly with Seattle and kind of came around. But they're getting back a guy that I don't know how much he helps them. Frank Reich could do as much magic as he can as their new coordinator, but he's Geno Smith, and I'm not sure Jets fans are real thrilled.
And he's also, who's he going to throw to outside of Garrett Wilson?
Right.
I mean, that's also the problem there. I also love Breece Hall chirping on social media. Oh, it looks like we do have money, and you don't have to tag me on the franchise. We'll see how it is. Sabres up 1-0 after the first period against Washington at KeyBank Center. With Vic, I'm John. We'll see you next Thursday right back here, streaming at 7:30.